Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Economics Design Podcast. My name is Ari Kimmelman. I'm a research analyst with Economics Design. Today, I'm very excited to be joined by my colleagues Sasha Ulitsky and Kiefer Zhang, and our guest for today, Daniel Paez from WorldSpark Studios, to discuss the economics of the upcoming blockchain game, Edenbrawl. Now, before we begin, could you guys please briefly introduce yourselves, and we'll get Daniel to start us off.
Hey everyone, I'm happy to be there. I'm Daniel, Director of Monetization and Game Economy at WorldSpark, and we're putting together Sparkadia, a new ecosystem of games using a new IP built on the immutable chain.
Hey everyone, I'm Kiefer. Thanks for having me on, Ari. I'm an associate consultant at Economics Design. I've been working on building out incentive systems for blockchain games since 2018. And had the privilege of working with Edenbrawl and creating their awesome economy, with my focus being on creating the various economic mechanisms.
Hey guys, I'm Sasha. I'm head of DeFi at Economics Design. I have a pleasure to be part of the team and helping for Edenbrawl to model financial model of their economy.
Awesome. So before we begin the conversation today, I'll briefly explain and provide context around what Sparkadia and Edenbrawl are. So Sparkadia refers to an interconnected series of games, the first of which being Edenbrawl, each developed by WorldSpark Studios and connected by the same world through a common theme and characters. Edenbrawl is a combination of the action combat of a brawler with the depth of a MOBA to create what's referred to in the white paper as being a MOBrawler. It contains skill-based combat, unique hero playstyles, streamlined player agency, and tactical game modes. Players control a single hero in objective-based maps, similar to MOBAs like League of Legends and Dota 2. Additionally, there's also a game mode called Edenball, which is described in the white paper as being a unique blend of capture the flag, FIFA, and intense brawler combat, where teams of players work together to grab a ball in the center of the map and score in the enemy team's end zone, as written in the white paper. So for more information, I would highly recommend reading the white paper and the economic paper, as it is a very easy and informative read. And as Kiefer subtly mentioned here, it has been a pleasure for the economics design team to have partnered with WorldSpark Studios to design the economy within the game. So I anticipate we'll have an awesome conversation today. So to start us off, I'll ask, and I'll get Daniel to start us off with this answer, if you could provide an overview of what's included in the economic paper.
Sure. So, like you kind of mentioned, or how Kiefer mentioned, the economy is pretty unique in that we kind of go holistically planning for future games, right, and scaling. So in the economic white paper right now, you'll see a lot of the different economic mechanics, from how players can actually access NFTs and tokens, how that mechanic looks like through a system we call tickets, how our staking model works, very different than your traditional staking models, as well as how we actually have a hybrid system of a hard currency, like your typical riot points, and a utility token. So in the economics paper, you'll be able to see all the different types of utility NFTs, mechanics, on-chain and off-chain, that players will be interacting with while they play.
Awesome. Any details, Sasha and Kiefer, you want to throw in there?
I might add also you can explore in the economy paper how the whole crafting system works. It's also quite unique and unleashes new ways to interact with the economy.
Awesome.
And there's also interesting components around bringing in some traditional free-to-play monetization around sort of battle pass systems. And so very, very interesting with a variety of different components targeted towards different types of users.
Mm-hmm. So that leads me perfectly into my next question, which is, could you guys please explain these unique economic designs like the staking system, the raffle system, the ticket passes, as well as others? And in addition to that, if you guys could explain how these systems work and why they are used and what problems they solve.
Yeah, I can kick that off. So right at the beginning of a player journey here, they come into the game, they create their game account like any other game. There's no wallet connection needed. We have a custodial system for that. And they're met with three options, right? And these three options are very akin to battle passes. We just call them ticket passes for now. And you have a free pass, so anyone who comes in is a free-to-play player. Very typical, in the gaming industry right now. They can just follow the free route. And then you have two paid routes, one a mid-tier and a top tier. As players play, they progress these like a battle pass, and they start earning off-chain rewards. And when they complete them, they actually receive an in-game resource called tickets. And tickets are used to participate in these in reward pools, which use a raffle type system in order to distribute NFTs and tokens. So every month, players will be able to see a number of different reward pools, what's contained inside them, how many tickets have been used up for each pool, right, as entries. And at the end of the month, we distribute the rewards to the winners. So players essentially go on a very easy conversion on-ramp, which are battle passes. One of the best conversion mechanics in the industry right now. They're guaranteed off-chain cosmetics and rewards. And then for the on-chain stuff, that's when they compete to try to get an NFT or a bundle of tokens. Obviously, the more tickets you get, the better your odds. And the whole idea here is through that system, we're actually able to be really, really accessible to everyone, be it a huge whale, someone who's dedicating, dozens of hours a week, to someone who just plays casually and doesn't spend anything. They all receive, different amounts of tickets, but they can all participate in the economy, which is very different than what you traditionally see in Web3 right now.
Yeah, and to add on to that a bit, there's some really interesting things that this raffle or ticket model does that's different than a lot of other games in terms of their asset distribution system. One component of that is that it gives really tight control over the inflation rate for all the assets in the economy. Because at any point in time, the team can very carefully decide the quantity of new tokens, new NFTs, all these on-chain assets, what quantity of them should be introduced at any point in time to actually line up well with the current demand for it, versus a lot of other economies where there's not very tight control. For example, like with Axie Infinity, especially with the early model, where the distribution of assets is based on the number of players in the economy. And so as that scaled up, the team might not actually have a very good idea of exactly how many tokens or how many of various asset types would be created at any point in time. And there's also a really interesting component around kind of the psychological connection between the activity and the reward. A lot of teams are kind of moving away from the concept of play to earn, where players are playing just because of essentially that financial incentive. But here we're able to kind of create some separation between actually doing the activity, so the actual playing around of the game, and getting that reward. And so in doing that, through having this ticket system where they're getting a reward that's randomized and also at a later time, it's less likely to have the effect of undermining some of that intrinsic incentive to actually enjoy playing the game.
Yeah, I think early on we had really interesting conversations on who our audiences were, and that kind of helped us dictate the approach we take. Obviously, it's not a very friendly system for folks that are only looking to value extract, right? Because you have no guarantee because of this RNG system. But those weren't our player bases, right? We're not looking to compete with Axie or with other games like DeFi Kingdoms, where the idea of value extraction is core to player engagement. Instead, we are looking for players who were looking to come into a game early on, likely buy some NFTs early on, and then just stick with one, maybe two titles later, farther down the line. And this type of system really provides a disincentive. So right off the bat, we don't set ourselves up making a promise of earning guaranteed, right? And I think that puts us in a position where we have a lot more flexibility and control over how the economy evolves over time, without that fear of if we make one small change, we'll lose half our player base overnight.
Maybe also to bit on what Daniel says, what I like as well with this raffle system and these different personas is that raffles are actually, it's not one raffle, but it's different types of raffles that appeal technically to different personas, because there's let's say NFT raffle. So if you're just interested in NFTs, you can put your tickets into this NFT raffle. There is a token raffle for those, let's call them more value extractors type of personas. And there is a crafting materials raffle, again, for crafters. That also helps to interact with different types of economic agents in the economy, still preserving this randomness of reward.
Mm-hmm. So following up on these, innovative systems, what inspired these to be included within the game? Was it some from aspirations from Web 2 games, some of them creative out of thin air? I'm wondering about that.
Yeah, for us, there was 3 main economic pillars and then 1 legal pillar when we first set out. And the first one was accessibility, right? We really had this challenge on how do we make a game that has NFTs and tokens be extremely accessible to everyone? And then how do we make that harmonious with the second pillar, which was sustainability, right? How do we last a long time? How can we let everyone come in, participate with on-chain rewards, and still be, around a year or 2 from now? And it was really through that type of system. So we knew that early conversions, battle passes are very, common and a very comfortable mechanic for many gamers. But at the same time, we couldn't just say, hey, finish a battle pass and get an NFT. That'll lead to, like Kiefer said, essentially hyperinflation of assets. So it was creating those to create harmony between sustainability and accessibility. And then the third one was debt. So a lot of these NFTs, especially the utility NFTs, we had an interesting challenge where with Edenbrawl specifically, we can't give NFTs that make players stronger than others. That'll ruin the core loop of the game. So our utility NFTs are actually focused very much around the reward aspect and the progression aspect, as opposed to strength or required to play almost. So that third pillar is really depth. So all our utility NFTs are made to allow players who do buy, say, a crafting station, right, to actually have a progression path that way. As they craft more, especially for themselves and other players, they level up this crafting station to higher rarities. And this is an NFT, right? So we're essentially switching your NFT for a higher rarity NFT as you use it. Same thing with like our hero portraits, which is kind of what do we think more of a next evolution of like a PFP, where players get to roll different elements until they're happy, and then they get to mint it. And then once they have it, they actually get to burn NFTs into it, very akin to Fortnite collection book, to progress, this hero portrait and unlock better buffs in terms of rewards and progression. So it's all this idea of when players do get an NFT that's beyond cosmetic, that there's a nice long path of progression that they can follow if they so choose to.
Mm-hmm. Kiefer, Sasha, is there anything you want to add on to that point?
Yeah, and it's just it's really important to consider for these different personas what activities we're expecting them to do in the economy and how we're setting up, for example, the token and hard currency model around who we're targeting with these various different activities. And so for reference here, there's 1 token and then an off-chain hard currency. And so kind of splitting off the in-game activity that we're expecting to be somewhat high volume and very targeted initially towards kind of traditional gamers who may not initially have any crypto exposure, making sure that they don't feel kind of excluded from the main gameplay components, and using kind of this traditional free-to-play monetization loop along with kind of the ticket pass model that they're comfortable with. And then so you have kind of these a little bit separated but still linked token and hard currency loops.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just going to piggyback off that. That model is very interesting because we did discuss multiple different types of models with more than 1 token. I think we talked up to 3 different tokens, a mixture of a token with a soft resource and a hard currency. So we discussed a lot of pros and cons of each one, and ultimately we found out we can appeal to both audiences, both your Web 2 native audience as well as your Web 3 native audience, by having a hybrid system where, like Kiefer said, we have a hard currency, purchased with your credit card, like your typical game, and it's used for all the main mechanics that a traditional player would look into. Buying your passes. If you got a blueprint NFT, which is required to craft, a skin, for example, you just put it together with some hard currency and the NPC will craft it for you. And we wanted to make sure that traditional players don't even realize they're playing a blockchain game. And part of that is really about making sure that any use of the token is highly optional, right? And so everything that the token is used for is very much akin to the motivations for Web3 users, right? Which is, hey, how do I, increase the value of my assets in the game? How do I generate more tokens or improve my rate of, winning tokens and reward pools? What about staking? So these type of things actually do require tokens. It's interesting because we've had lots of conversations on where does value end up accruing, right? To like the equity of the company or the token of the company. And what we saw was there tends to be a downside when we go pure token value accrual for us, because like other games have done, if it's purely accruing to the token, so everything requires a token, right, to generate as much demand as possible for it, that puts us in a position where for us to generate revenue for the company and expand our operations, we're dumping tokens on the exchange in order to generate that revenue. We can't pay contractors, we can't pay outsourcing studios, we can't pay our own people in tokens. So for us, it's like, okay, let's split it up. Everything that requires hard currency, this is stuff that's accruing to our equity as a company, and that's what we're going to be using to fund our operations. All the value that's accruing to the token, that's for the community and token holders, right? We as WorldSpark aren't going to be going to the exchange multiple times a month and putting out more dumping tokens just to generate revenue. We actually have our revenue taken care of through the hard currency.
Mm-hmm. And so the token is used to, there's the ability to purchase the hard currency using the Spark token. That's correct?
Right. Yeah. You get two opportunities for that. One is in order to improve the volatility of the token, right? Because you can imagine every 30 days we're putting a bunch of tokens out there. A token is actually distributed in a locked format, and then they unlock over time. During that period of unlocking, players have the opportunity to convert those locked tokens into hard currency. And what's cool about that is then we can control the exchange rate, right? So if you have $10 worth of tokens, we can come in and say, hey, we want to reduce the quantity of tokens flowing into the system. We're going to give you $11 or $12 or, $15 worth of hard currency for you to forego these tokens. We'll take them ourselves and, we'll burn them or we'll recycle them or we'll just hold them for a bit just to, control the economy. And we're going to give you this hard currency that you can use to craft, you can use to buy your passes, or you can use them to buy off-chain stuff directly from WorldSpark. The second opportunity is once you do have unlocked, once you do have unlocked tokens, say you staked and you got your reward and you got your tokens back, we do give you the opportunity to convert these tokens into hard currency. This is a one-way street. You cannot buy tokens with hard currency, right? So it is very much a one-way street that allows us to kind of lock in value into the ecosystem while providing players something really beneficial that they need anyways, which is hard currency. You can't buy a pass with tokens, right? So it's kind of a win-win scenario for both us and the players.
Something else that's pretty interesting, I think, with kind of this mixed model here around having the off-chain hard currency that's used for a lot of the kind of core gameplay monetization versus other projects that might be using like a utility token for this, is accessibility in terms of like tax implications of it. Because for a lot of other projects, if you're expecting users to be using like a utility token very frequently, that can be incurring in a large number of taxable transactions, which could be rather off-putting to users who are coming from traditional gaming, where that's not really something you have to keep in mind. And so it still really keeps this accessible to that traditional user base of gamers.
Mm-hmm. I think something that's interesting that I read from the white paper is that the raffle prizes include what's called the token essence, which can be converted to Spark. That's kind of what you were referencing, Daniel. What I found that was particularly interesting about that is that you have the option to convert it immediately into jingles, or you can wait an extended period of time and then it slowly converts into the Spark token or into Spark tokens. So for me, I thought right away that was totally taking advantage of our understanding of human psychology and encouraging people to convert that token and exchange it right away because people don't want to have to wait that long period of time. Wondering if that's what you guys intended when you built that structure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just for everyone listening, token essence are the locked tokens and the jingles are the hard currency. Whole idea with our narrative team was coins jingle in your pocket, so let's just call them jingles. But that was the original idea. I think we saw the problem of high volatility every 30 days because of the influx of tokens. So we're like, hey, how do we just smooth out this curve? But at the same time, as we did that, okay, tokens unlock. Then we came to the point like, should we give players an option to convert this to hard currency, right? It gives us one more lever to pull if we need to. And probably one of the biggest lessons from that first generation of Web3 games is you want to get all your tools in place before you launch, as opposed to, after you launch and realizing you just don't have the tools to deal with your economy. This is one of the cool ones that I quite like because it's a very soft touch with some that can have some pretty big implications in terms of the economic impact. And like you say, if players have to wait, they got a big bundle of tokens. They got $30 worth of hard currency tokens, and they need to wait 30 days for all of this to fully unlock. One every single day. They still gonna have to buy their pass, and then they're brought to the option of, what if they're giving me a good bonus here of hard currency, why don't I just forego the rest of these tokens? I already have some, I'm going to forego the rest, and I'm going to go buy myself a pass and keep on playing. So it definitely provides a way for example, a free player that never spent anything, rather than wait for the token, they go for the hard currency. And because that token no longer goes into circulation, it helps this token increase in value. So for us, it's like, hey, free players can actually contribute to the overall valuation of a company and its tokens.
And it really locks people into the economy and extends the length of activity, or brings people back because with either method that they choose, either if they really want to stick it out for the tokens, they have to wait for it, which gives them a reason to continue to come back to the game versus just playing one session and cashing out your tokens. Or if they do opt for that switch over, which we want them to do, then now they have hard currency, which they can't sell, that's locked to the game, and now they have that and they're going to spend it, and it's another reason to come back. It's like, I have this currency I earned, better come back to the game. So it's a good method to improve overall retention.
And maybe also to add, beyond the psychology elements, this is, as Daniel mentioned, this is a great monetary policy lever, because it's not only just putting less pressure on sell of the token due to conversion, but also it allows you to play with this exchange rate or this bonus to encourage certain behaviors, and that way indirectly affect the supply of Spark token. And that's very important overall with this, I would call it new breed of games that's less just value extraction things, to have lots of different monetary policy levers embedded in different digital assets, so it can be controllable and more sustainable. The other thing that probably also ties to prior question on this dual token economy or single token economy. If you think about Edenbrawl, it's basically a dual token economy, but the beauty is one is on-chain token, the other is off-chain token. That makes you more flexible, because at the end of the day, Jingle could be on-chain the same currency, but because it's off-chain, there is less the sensitivity and attention to it, how it trades, what are rates, what are prices. So it's easier to concentrate all the value accrual on one token, though using the same mechanism as with dual token economies for the second one, but not making it on-chain.
Mm-hmm. I want to move on to a little bit of a different area of discussion now, and I want to discuss player personas or player types. So I'm wondering if the team has any specific insights or predictions in terms of what percentage of the player base will be people looking to extract versus those who are willing to invest money for their pleasure of playing the game. That's my question, the next question for the conversation.
Yeah, we actually do have a baseline that we're working off of. It's based on a number of different assumptions. But what was interesting here was precisely coming from traditional Web2 studios. Back when I worked at Activision Blizzard, you looked at personas very much on your game motivators, right? It's like, do you like collecting? Do you like power? Do you like destruction? Do you like cooperation? Do you like competition? Things like that. And then coming here, like actually there are also a number of different personas within Web3, and we kind of laid them out. So right now we have 4 main ones that we're kind of looking at outside of non-crypto native players. We're looking at crypto gamers, crypto crafters, miners, and collectors, right? With miners being kind of that value extractor. And we kind of just assume something simpler to make our designs and modeling a little easier, which is we think our goal is to have max like about 20% of our player base be solely motivated by that value extraction piece. And that's important because obviously if something happens to our token and the markets kind of plummet in general and our token goes down with it, we're kind of limiting the amount of damage that our player base can take, right? Because our collectors are there for the NFTs. They're there to accumulate a number of different assets, especially assets that are worth more because they're rare. And like anyone who has like a financial portfolio, you never want to liquidate your portfolio, right? You hold on to it. While the crafters are there, essentially, I see them more kind of as a mix of collectors and collectors and folks looking to kind of extract, but they're there to kind of build up their day to day, right? Like I craft, I need to play in order to craft, so I like playing as well. And crafting actually gives me not direct type rewards like tokens. It actually give me, we can go more into crafting later, actually give me royalties, right? So if the market's healthy, I love crafting. When the market's not that healthy, I'm still playing, so I'm still crafting automatically. I don't have to do anything special. And when our crypto, and that was like 25%. And then our crypto gamers, those are folks looking really much for what they call like the play and sometimes earn, right? It's like, no, I'm very interested in NFTs and tokens, but I'm very interested in actually having a good time. And that's like another quarter of our player base. So these kind of assumptions we created, I think they're relatively safe assumptions based on the quantity of NFTs we're putting out for crafters, as well as our disincentives for these miners that are purely looking to extract. And yeah, that's kind of what we ran with. But the cool thing about this is, as we start going live and we start seeing the type of players coming in, we can adjust these to see what the impact on the economy will be. And then we can start pulling the right levers to keep everything healthy.
Yeah, from my side, I would add, it was really a fun experience and exercise to model all these different personas, because at the heart of the game, all they drive further behaviors. How many, how much time each of those people will be spending. Then, based on those distributions, we assumed if they spend such amount of time in playing, how many battle passes will complete, how many tickets they will get, what raffles they will be choosing. Like crafters will probably go to blueprints, collectors to NFTs, miners to will go to the token one. So yeah, it was really an interesting one, and a very core to the game to understand how it will go, this personas and their allocations.
Mm-hmm. I think, I think that would be very interesting to model out, and I'm sure it's quite a tedious process in most forms. I want to jump into one of the interesting mechanics again, which is staking. I know we touched upon it a little bit, but I would hope for you guys to expand a little bit more about how it works and why it's unique to some of the other blockchain games we've seen on the market.
Yeah, for sure. So, your traditional staking essentially is a high yield savings account, right? And none of these are very sustainable unless you're sacrificing significant amounts of revenue just to sustain it. At the same time, it just creates more inflation, right, of the token. So for us, we actually took it from a different approach. Said we have a problem we need to solve here, which is we have a lot of dwelling NFTs. And we want to make sure that players have an incentive to hold tokens. How about we mix them together and we actually use staking as a distribution mechanic for NFTs? So how it works, and I'll use dwellings as an example. Dwellings are players or housing, very similar to Genshin Impact style. That's kind of where you do your crafting. It's where you install all the utility modifiers that give you buffs. And dwellings come in 5 different rarities on the NFT side of things. So how it works is after a pre-sale of dwellings, a majority of dwellings will still be in our possession. We're going to put a majority of those into the staking pool. So players come in, they'll stake tokens, and depending on the duration of the stake and the quantity staked, they'll kind of climb a staking leaderboard. Once they hit a certain threshold, they're granted the opportunity to claim the reward, which would be an uncommon tier dwelling, kind of your lowest NFT tier. And then they have 3 interesting options here. The first, obviously, claim the reward, get your tokens back, and now you have an uncommon tier dwelling. The other one is remain staked to continue increasing, your points, let's say, and climbing the leaderboard to get a higher rarity dwelling. The next one will be rare. And the third one actually is we didn't want people just to hold, right? We want to encourage use of the token. So like, hey, you actually have the option to burn the tokens you have staked, and we will immediately upgrade the rarity of your dwelling to the next tier. And this is a big one because now for these type of players who are more crypto inclined and are looking kind of at the the value of tokens, if tokens, value has come down, it's actually a great deal for them, right? It's like, oh yeah, before it was like $100 of tokens and now it's like $70 worth of tokens because token prices are down. I'm just going to sacrifice it and I'm going to go immediately get the rare dwelling, and they can take a look at the NFT marketplace and see what the rare dwelling is worth, right? And then you kind of add the element of time, right? Or I can stay staked and now I have to wait another month, just to be able to climb, I think. So that's kind of how the staking pool works. We also have the crafting stations distributed that way. And then the third staking pool is more kind of I kind of call it a short-term piggy bank where players can park their tokens and we'll passively give them some tickets. And this is the cool thing. Like if we were passively giving them more tokens, that's an inflation problem. What we're just doing is we're allowing them to find a way to increase their odds of getting tokens from the reward pools and NFTs from the reward pools without creating hyperinflation. And, do that, they're holding tokens, and we're kind of having one more lever, essentially, right? We can always offer more tickets, the rate of tokens staked, the tickets earned, we can increase that to increase holding, of that as well. So that's kind of like a summary of how our staking pools look like. But if the mechanic is well received and we like how it's performing, we do have other designs for cool NFTs that we probably want to distribute through the staking system as well.
Mm-hmm. Do you guys want to add to that at all?
Yeah, I really like the ticket distribution method through the staking component. Just having this intermediary currency is really useful for allowing, as kind of Daniel mentioned, that scale up with the player base without having that be a direct impact on the inflation rate. So you can still control overall inflation and reward a variable number of players at the same time. With the effect just being on the overall odds of winning any given raffle, and which works out because with the primary target on gamers, so those who aren't necessarily expecting a reward, it's just kind of an additional bonus. There would be very negatively reactive to any reduction in odds versus in alternative models where players might be very reactive to a reduction in direct token inflationary rewards.
Mm-hmm. I wanna move the conversation a little bit from this topic onto risks. I would like to know if there's specific risks or concern the team has regarding its economic sustainability, and that can include botting, for example, and what the team is actively doing to ensure that these issues don't come about and ruin the economy like we've seen in a lot of other games.
Yeah, it's funny to bring that up. We were just discussing botting yesterday with the designers and engineers. So botting is always a game problem, right? It's always been a game problem. And now when you create the ability to attain liquid assets, right, to easily convert into kind of a return, there's just bigger incentives to do it. So I think we kind of take a couple approaches here. One is from a traditional gaming perspective, it's always kind of a game of whack-a-mole in gaming, right? It's like you create better controls for botting from like player reports. This is a multiplayer game, right? Edenbrawl is a multiplayer game. So the game itself is not very friendly towards botting, but these are kind of things that exist just to make it harder. The next piece of the puzzle is then the economic component, which is, hey, there is an RNG system here. So if someone is botting, right, and they want to kind of maximize their chances of actually getting liquid assets, could they do like 100,000 bots all doing the free track? They can. We'll probably catch a lot of those, but the free track is very much kind of a taster for folks, kind of an on-ramp for people to get into on-chain rewards. So when you look at the return or like the probability of actually getting an NFT or getting tokens from a free account, it's significantly smaller, right? So then what are these folks going to do? Like, oh, should we buy battle passes for our botting accounts? When I know like half or maybe even more than half are getting caught within a week. So you create all these economic disincentives through the RNG system and through the mechanics that are required to increase your odds, right? Increase the number of tickets you get to the point where there's lots of disincentives. It's not easy to do. So the risk and reward just kind of pushes these folks to say use their resources in another game that's a lot easier to extract value from, but it's always a risk, right? If the game explodes and there's a huge demand for token because speculators on exchanges are just seeing the the hype around the game, so they're just assuming the token will increase in price, obviously then the risk reward calculation for these folks improves. So that's just something that's an ongoing thing, right? In gaming, and I think for Web3, especially if your systems aren't designed to discourage pure value extraction, it's going to be kind of a bane for many, many games, I think, for the next couple of years easily.
Yeah, to piggyback off that a bit, the raffle mechanic is a nice kind of a way to deal with this to some extent. In that, yeah, when you look at other games, botters, they want to scale up and do as much of this as possible. And generally that means more accounts, more earning potential. And it's still like theoretically the same here, but as you kind of scale up and they have a massive, at the far end of it, a massive increase in the number of users doing this, then that does materially impact the overall odds of any individual account getting this financial reward out of it. And so there's an opportunity cost here. And so while there is some value that can be extracted, once you start trying to scale up, there's kind of an opportunity cost of trying to extract value here versus trying to do it in a different game. So it's not necessarily about there being like no potential for extraction, but just making it less attractive to try to do that in this game versus another one. And I think relatively speaking, this is going to be somewhat less attractive to try to do that too.
Yeah, maybe another one mechanism that adds a complexity for botting is also the token distribution through the essence concept itself. So you don't get, even if you won it through the ticket, it's still 30 days until you get full of those vested. That also puts additional, even currency exchange risks on somebody who is doing this. So all this raffle and kind of a vesting, let's call the essence things, they ought just cost to execute for the bot.
Yeah, and it gives us more time to catch them, right? I think another interesting risk that many games have, obviously, is what happens when the token kind of price support collapses, right? And I think what's interesting about the hybrid situation here that we have for the game is that we're actually able to build a treasury of fiat as opposed to purely a treasury of tokens. So I kind of categorize like the things we can do to keep the economy safe into three. One is like just things that automatically kick in, right? If the price of one X goes up, what happens to Y? And those are all kind of self-balancing, trying to find equilibrium point. Then the other ones are things we manually do, like the bonus, right, for hard currency if you exchange your tokens. And then the third one is kind of break glass in case emergency. And what's cool about that is our ability to execute buyback and burns if the market requires them. Because we do sell hard currency and people need it for passes, this is a huge source of revenue for us and would allow us to actually build up reserves that we can go in there and give our tokens some price support if we need to, especially when it's through a pump and dump or some type of exploitation that folks are doing regarding the token. We can come in there and say, okay, we actually have the ability to restart essentially trading of this token without kind of being handicapped, because many projects right now, their treasuries are their tokens. And so they have the ability to release more supply, but to reduce supply, they're going to have to use some other type of currency.
I think it would be beneficial for people who haven't necessarily read the white paper, the economic paper, to expand on what techniques the team uses to fund the treasury. And if that's a transaction fee, for example, what percentage that is.
Yeah. So our main... we try to keep it simple. Our main source of direct revenue in fiat, right, is the sale of jingles, the sale of hard currency. That's used to buy your passes. That's used for crafting. And that's used to buying off-chain stuff from World Spark. And that is purchased from us through, your credit card, your debit card. If you want to do a bank transfer, that's fine. Then other payment methods. That is what we consider our treasury. Now, our treasury of tokens, that is more what we use for community type activations. That is the type of thing we want to use for special events, the type of thing we want to do for giveaways within the community, the type of thing we want to do through giveaways through other communities. So that's more of a lever. The way we see it very much is our company is running off our ability to generate revenue, while the value that's accruing to tokens, we want to make sure that that value is for the community, right? So anytime we do distribute these tokens, outside of like us employees, we do have tokens. And obviously when we bring on investors, we do a deal of equity and tokens. But for their day-to-day operations, those tokens, like once we're live, that's for the community. The value is for that community, as opposed to, the value is one pool, and then us as developers are going to decide what percentage of that value we're going to realize and what we're going to leave for everyone else. That's something we don't want players to have to worry about.
Mm-hmm. Kiefer, Sasha, anything to add to that point?
I don't think so on that one. Covered it pretty well.
Awesome. So I think it's worth mentioning that the initial NFT release was quite recent. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think the first day was last Monday. Yeah. Wait, no, sorry, this Monday. Yeah, the 19th. Yeah. So it's early on Monday. Yeah.
A couple of days ago. So I wanted to ask. I saw that the prices of the NFT was quite low relative to a lot of other projects, and that it was only a percentage of the total NFTs that were going to be circulating within the world that were released initially. Pardon me. So I'm wondering if you could share a little bit more information about why that price was chosen, why that number as a proportion of the total NFTs was also chosen to be released for the initial sale.
Sure. So the NFT that we're talking about, we call it the Origin Collection, and there are 8 different NFTs, one for each one of our main our lineup of characters. And when you put them together, right, they complete the collection. The more complete your collection is, the higher ticket buff you actually get when you earn tickets in the game. Plus a number of other things we've stated to the community over the week, which is access to alpha playtests, as well as getting onto like special whitelists, for example. So that NFT was kind of created to test the waters, right? We only started building our community about a month and a half ago is when we actually started to focus on building the community. And we wanted to kind of test the waters. So what we took in terms of the approach for this NFT is we actually have a total max supply ever of 80,000, 10,000 of each of these NFTs. And we priced it at about $20. It's sold for ETH right now on immutable marketplaces, but we priced it about $20. And the idea here was we wanted to get more NFTs in the hands of more individual people for a couple of different reasons. One is when you have a wider distribution of the supply, there's less risk to if someone decides to dump everything they have, obviously. The other one is that the more owners you have, the more people you have championing your project, right? So this idea of pricing it low, making it accessible, putting enough quantity out there. So we did 10% of the total quantity for this sale. And then we did a number of giveaways to lots of different communities. It was very much to establish a community of owners of NFTs, as opposed to, if we went out and say, hey, we're going to sell 100 NFTs and they're $100 each. We kind of cut out a lot of people who would have liked to, but at $100, it might seem a bit risky. We do have a number of people who wanted to complete the collection. Actually, I think most people wanted to complete the collection, so they bought 8, which total would be $160. But a lot of people bought 2 or 3 of the characters that they most liked so far. And the cool thing about this that we've seen is almost everyone's a holder, right? We had very, very few flippers want to come in and buy it. So we actually seen a lot of people just holding on. And it was like, perfect. This is kind of what we wanted. So right now we're looking to wrap up the sale and then begin to essentially analyze, like, okay, now that we've cut out this, we stopped our primary sale, how does the secondary market react, right? What's the volume of trade? Are people mostly holding? Are people trying to flip it really fast? And we're seeing volatility in the price before we decide to do future distributions of this NFT. The idea here is we want NFTs that are present for multiple cohorts that are going to be coming in until we launch the game, right? We don't want people to kind of have that bad feeling when like, hey, I heard about this game 3 months too late and I couldn't get that one NFT. We want to hold a lot of the supply for the future to little by little release a little bit to kind of scratch that itch from players that kind of missed out early on. But at the same time, folks that did buy it early on, they're actually getting a number of perks and benefits for being kind of early adopters.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious actually, Daniel, if in terms of kind of the persona targeting here for this sale was very much like crypto native in terms of like who you guys have been targeting in the last month who you're trying to get in and who you're kind of targeting the sale towards, or if you're trying to maybe expand it a little bit towards maybe a few traditional gamers given the low pricing?
Yeah, actually, it was an interesting mix of both. So over the last month and a half, we have been building the community, focusing on Web3 native communities, right? Attracting them and acquiring them into our own channels. But what we've seen actually is, even though we talk about them in separate personas, many times gamers can also be, crypto native folks. And so we saw actually a really interesting mix of people that liked the game. They wanted to see gameplay and they bought. It wasn't so much, okay, where's your token at? So much so that we actually had a number of people saying, how can I buy this, right? Which is, for crypto, it's like, well, you just tell them the marketplace it's at or the chain, and they normally could figure it out. Instead, we actually put together kind of a how-to for our user base. And we had a very interesting mix of people coming in. At the same time, Immutable, it's a layer 2. It's relatively new in terms of its position in amongst chains. And Rarible, which was the marketplace that we kind of launched it on, they had just introduced Immutable as one of the chains they support. So we had a lot of educational, let's say, curve to go through with lots of our user base. Right now, we're still trying to get a better grasp of, what percentage are crypto native, what percentage are more gamers, what percentage are kind of like crypto casuals, to get a better idea of who ended up buying our, so many of these NFTs. So it's been a pretty interesting week so far.
I'm also curious, with the pricing, there can be two strategies that drive the price. First, if your NFT sales is kind of a fundraise, then you're inherently is interested to maximize the price, to make the fundraise successful. The other one is, as you said, Daniel, accessible distribution, where the price itself, it does not matter that much for you as a project because it's not a fundraising exercise. So I think also that's why some projects are different and have like really high prices on the NFTs, because for them it's a way to raise capital, alternative to making like token sale, but through NFTs.
Correct. Yeah, we do have types of sales like that planned for next year, but we want to develop the product a little bit more. This was very much about kind of testing the waters. Over the last 2 months, have been focusing about launching a brand, Sparkadia, and getting a lot of content out there. People have been loving the game. We brought a lot of people in who played the prototype and say it's probably the best Web3 game right now, and it's just a prototype. Our next build kind of blow that out of the water. So for us, this was very much about testing the waters, getting community to convert into owners already. But the way I see it is not so much like, hey, how many putting out there and what's the price? I kind of see it as like, what is the total dollar amount of interest in the project? So if there's like $100,000 worth of interest and we price it to, essentially capture $100,000, you don't leave much support and interest there to have the secondary market be healthy. Right. Learned a lot of this at the last studio I was at. After I left, there was a mistake done where they tried to capture a lot more of that value. And then the secondary market kind of lost a lot of its price support. For me, if there's like $100,000, you try to capture half of that max and you leave the other half to give it some support on the secondary market trading.
So my last question for today is, what's next on the roadmap for the next couple of months for the team and for the project?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've put out a sizzle reel of our new build of Edenbrawl. It has a lot of our new characters already in the game. It's got a new map, new skills, new VFX. It's really, really fun. And right now the team is working really hard to get that build to be external friendly. So being able to bring in content creators, being able to bring in investors, being able to bring in community members to come play it. That's on the product side. At the same time, we do a smaller group of folks that are working on our own proper marketplace. That is one of the banes of crypto. The marketplaces are purely built for crypto natives, right? As opposed to folks that we might want to on-ramp into crypto. So we do have some folks working on that. In terms of what's next outside of the product, we're going to be wrapping up the sale, taking a look at things, seeing where they are. And then we do have other types of NFTs we want to put out there, like early access passes, like our dwellings, like bundled with our crafting stations. And so then it's planning around what do we need to hit in terms of growing our community before we want to execute those sales. So that's kind of where we're at. And I think one of the biggest advantages we have is we can create so much cool content from our game. And that's what's been driving a lot of our community growth so far.
Awesome. I look forward to continue monitoring the project and seeing it grow. So thank you Sasha and Kiefer for joining me today. And a big thank you to Daniel for coming on the podcast. It was wonderful to have you for our discussion today.
Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun. Yeah.
So that concludes our conversation. If you like this discussion, please consider giving it a like and subscribe to our podcast and YouTube channel for more videos like this. If there's a specific topic you would like to hear, please let us know in the comments or by sending us a message on our Economics Design Discord chat. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Kari.
Thank you, guys.